I often tell people as I introduce myself that I get to be a part of our Ag Intel and Farm Voice initiatives, which are really about telling the evolving story of agriculture through the lens of farmers and ranchers and those that are in the dirt and in the field each and every day. And it's an honor to get to be a part of that. As Ben said, in our current iteration, we've been doing this Farm Voice event for the last 5 years and much longer than that in previous iterations. But through that time, particularly more recently, we've been able to talk about a number of different trends and ideas, including sustainability, regenerative agriculture, the next generation producer, farm economics, and a number of things. And one of the common threads across all of those conversations has been around the idea of new tools and technologies and farm innovations that producers are using in adopting each and every day to make their operations much more efficient, much more sustainable, and much more profitable at the end of the day. So today, I'm extremely honored to bring Emily Ford and Craig Lehr to the stage. Please join me in welcoming them to Farm Voice. And it's a great opportunity for us to dig a little bit deeper into some of the mindsets, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and just some of the ways in which producers are thinking about innovations at the field level within their farms and some of the challenges and opportunities that they see going forward as well. So Craig and Emily, thank you so much for being here. To get started, maybe just give us a quick introduction to yourself, to your operations, to your farms, to the businesses that you're a part of each and every day. Craig?
Thank you. So as mentioned, my name is Craig Lehr. So our operation is located in southern Alberta near Medicine Hat. I'm the third generation, kind of getting close to that 75-year mark. Our farm's been around now. So over the years, we've developed into about a 7,000 head backgrounding feedlot. We're calving out around 1,100 cows every year, and as well as some irrigation and dryland farming. So we like to have our fingers in a little bit of everything, so we're busy all year round.
Thanks.
And my name is Emily Ford. I'm the potato production and agronomy lead for Quattro Ventures. We're a joint venture of 5 family farms located in Bow Island, Alberta, and we focus on specialty crop production. And our farm's a split of probably 60% irrigated, 40% dryland.
Tell me a little bit about some of the crops that you grow, because there's a multitude.
We do some different specialty crops. So potatoes are a big one, sugar beets, and then we have an essential oils division where we do mint, peppermint, dill, and a little bit of catnip.
Yeah. Very nice. Just to get started, take us through a little bit about, as we talk about new innovations, tools and technologies, what are some of the areas in terms of new tools, technologies, and innovations that you're focused on or starting to adopt more broadly within your operations, both historically and as you're looking at today and the future? What are some of those technologies that you're most interested in or looking at the closest? Maybe Emily, I'll start with you.
For us, we're really focused on data integration and automation. I would say those are the things that are really making us pay attention right now. Anything that improves operational efficiency and decision making, really for better decisions. I think that's what we're really focusing in on now.
So for us, it's along the same lines, I guess. Labor savings is really something we have to look at. We're pretty fortunate to have some very skilled labor in our operation, but I guess to frame the context here a little bit, when I joined our operation back, it's been over 20 years now, I was one of 7 partners sitting around our board table. Over the years, and as of last year, we're down to 3. So that's really changed the whole dynamic of the operation. We've moved from a position where we had all of us to manage and run the place. We essentially needed workers. So now we've shifted to where we need people to help us manage the operation and look after things because we can't do it ourselves. So a lot of the things that we're looking at is how do we develop the staff and give them the tools that they need to help them move along to be successful, and technology definitely plays a role in that.
Emily, maybe talk a little bit about your experience with that. You're obviously in a big organization that has a lot of employees and a lot of specialization within it as well. Maybe talk a little bit about your experience in how some of those tools and technologies and the automation plays into that across all divisions or, spectrums of your operation?
Well, we definitely don't have it perfected. I would say in the last 18 months, we just adopted a new software that's sort of supposed to house everything under one roof, every tractor pass, every fertilizer application, all agronomy scouting, water applications, all of those things. And to get that integrated seamlessly across, what do we have, 6 divisions, 48 staff? That's a big task. Like, it's taken us a year and we're still not there. Yeah, it's just making it work, getting everybody trained up. And when you have varying levels of like educational backgrounds and abilities with technologies, it becomes, it's a lot more difficult than you would think on the surface.
Sure. You both have talked a lot about, efficiency and labor savings. Maybe just talk a little bit about some of the benchmarks that you each set in terms of how you determine if a technology or a tool is being easily adopted or efficient, or if it's really driving good ROI. Maybe talk about some of the benchmarks that you're using to determine if it's being successful or not, or even just as you're evaluating whether or not that investment was worth it to you.
Yeah, it can, I guess just looking into it and what your needs are. And there's a lot of tools and stuff out there to gather a lot of data on everything from, I'm talking the cattle side, the cropping side, we all know that, but it's really important to look at in these things, what are you going to do with that data, and are you actually going to use that data? So that really has to factor into your decision-making process to begin with. So that's one of the things I look at. The other thing, obviously, the labor side of it, and how can that help save some labor or just make things more efficient, I guess, is a big thing. So, like, I'll use an example. One of the things we're currently investigating and moving towards for next year is artificial intelligence type tags for tagging our cow herd. And that's a strictly labor savings things. If we can replace staff with some of that, where you don't have to monitor these cattle on a hourly or, during calving on a continual basis throughout the day, and you could have the ability to get alerts if there's detecting calving problems or anything like that. So it's, finding tools like that can really help develop. And with that, I always say, because this gets into the whole stockmanship conversation on the beef side, and I always refer to these things as they're never going to replace a good stockman when it comes to livestock. And I always think that's really important to note when we talk about these technologies. They are such an important tool to help keep ag moving forward, especially in the beef sector. But they're a tool for a stockman, and they're never going to replace a good stockman. If you can use those tools and you have a good stockman, you're going to be very successful.
So Emily, benchmarks?
I think for us, what we look at, because right now I think a lot of stuff we want people come to our door and say, oh, we can collect all this data. We don't have a data collection problem. We're actually drowning in data. But the way we receive that data today doesn't actually help us paint a picture to make a better decision, to improve our ROI or make things more sustainable or reduce cost. It's just spreadsheets. I kind of liken it to if you had a smartwatch that gave you 1,000 data points every second, and you ask the algorithm, well, am I healthy? And it just spits you back another spreadsheet. That's sort of the position that we're in today. We have all this information, but what can we do with it? And I guess I should just add also, in Southern Alberta, we can't talk about technology and all of those things without adding water to the conversation. Any technology that helps us use the drop to the best of its ability, that drop of water, that's what we're also after, because it's a limited resource. And we've learned some lessons over the last couple of years when we're under allocation, what we can and can't get away with. So
I always find with a lot of this technology and a lot of aspects of the business, it's sometimes hard to pick out a defined benchmark you want to achieve, because I find so much it's not one tool that's going to make you successful. It's the 1,000 little things along the way. There's no silver bullet. And I've kind of learned that the hard way over the years. You put a lot of expectations on something, like it can change the operation, but it does help, and it's just really hard to define exactly what that benchmark is. But you have to look at your overall trend line. When you implement all these different tools over time, is it improving? Are your, what your outcome's improving, right? Are the cattle more efficient, or you're increasing your yields? And it's just developing that trend line and believing in the work you've done to make the decisions to bring in the tools that you did.
That's a great point in terms of looking at some of the outcomes. Would you say that you've identified what those right outcomes should be, or is that a constant learning of what do we want the outcome to be based on this technology or based on this tool? Or do you kind of have a really defined set of what you expect from it that you're kind of measuring that tool against?
Yeah, I guess the outcome's always changing. It really never, I know in this industry it seems, you do something to improve your operation and you make it more efficient, you make it better. And boy, I got more time on my hands. What's the next thing? And it's just that continual. That's why ag, I would say, it's one of the most efficient industries in the world, is because that's how we operate. It's never enough. We're always trying to look for the next thing.
And I would say for us, because we're predominantly crop production based, that yield is a big driver of how we measure success. And one thing that we say often when we're trying to decide whether we should adopt something or not is that we do have to establish, okay, what does success look like at the end of the season? And we always say if you're not measuring it, you can't manage it. So we try to come up with some benchmarks before we head into the season. So when we wrap up, we can kind of evaluate whether we would consider it a success or not.
You each mentioned artificial intelligence as well in terms of AI. I don't think, obviously within our organization, we're looking a lot at what artificial intelligence means for us. I think every business across the world is looking at artificial intelligence and what are the things it means for their business. What do you see as some of the opportunities with artificial intelligence, or what are some of the challenges that you see with it? You both seem open to evaluating it and starting to test it. But what's your approach to AI as it relates to your business?
I don't know, close your eyes and try it, I guess. It's really overwhelming when you start thinking of the overall picture of AI. And I don't know, I just look at it as you just watch these tools come out and look at what you need and just kind of think about how it could make that a little bit easier. And because it's really overwhelming when you think about what AI can do or where it's going to go for that matter. So I think you just figure out where you could see improvement with it. And I know for my mind, it goes way beyond what I can comprehend. So as far as what AI could do for us. So
I think for me, from an agronomic standpoint, AI and the potential is limitless. I think a lot of that data I was talking about that we collect, I'm hoping that we can throw some of that into AI and it will see patterns that we can't see. And when I'm developing things like the crop rotation, when we have 26 different crops that we're trying to figure out what goes where, can I throw all our historical data into AI? And it's going to say, every time you do beans after this crop, they yield really well. Because it's going to be able to pick up things that maybe I don't notice and hopefully optimize that way.
Livestock would be very similar. Tools to help, if there's machines. The one thing I would love to see down the road for our operation, we background all these calves. We do a lot of sorting of cattle, not by weight, but by type of cattle, how we feel they're going to grow, looking at their frame structure, height, depth, all those kind of things. And this goes back to the stockmanship conversation, but if we can have artificial intelligence, that we can run these cattle down an alley and they can take that human element out and stuff, artificial intelligence can play a huge role there in consistency of what we market and the type of cattle we market, which ultimately makes the finishing guy a lot happier. So,
have you started to adopt specific AI tools already? Obviously, there's the ChatGPTs of the world and the Claudes and, any number of those kind of broad tools. But have you started to test them and to trial them and to see how they fit?
I had the opportunity over winter to do some work with an early product. It wasn't available to the public yet. And they let me, use the platform and put some of my big data sets in there and sort of see how it went. So just to that level now, just kind of seeing what fits and is there value. But it's nice to have the opportunity to try some of those things before you have to pay for them. So
Right. Any tools, AI tools that you're starting to use or adopt immediately?
Well, we're looking at the cattle tags. We did take a run at trying some this year from a company based out of Saskatchewan. So we did buy tags, trying to be an early adopter, I guess, and get in on some long-term better pricing and just be a part of the testing process to help these tags develop the way that would work for us and put that feedback into the system. So unfortunately, timelines didn't pan out and they weren't able to get the tags to that production stage in time. So, eagerly anticipating that for next year and looking forward to helping that develop, because I see huge value in that.
Talk maybe a little bit about the adoption curve. So I think you both are very much early adopters and interested in technology and looking at different tools and availability of that. But maybe talk about what some of your expectations are versus the reality of adopting some of these new tools. And maybe more specifically, what's your expectation in terms of company support and service as it relates to the adoption of these? You said overwhelming, particularly as it relates to AI. I mean, innovation can be overwhelming, right? Like it's a big learning curve. So maybe talk about a little bit some of your expectations and some of the things that you expect from these companies as you're introducing those into your operation.
well, I think the service has to be there. We've had a few different companies come to our door, make this big promise of this is going to, double your yield. I'm exaggerating, but something along those lines. And you just need to do this. And I think the misconception is that we maybe are slow as farmers. We're slow at adopting things, but I don't think there's an unwillingness for adoption, but there's a risk mitigation factor that we really have to strongly consider because our margins are so thin, right? So it has to be really well thought out. And you can't just drop the technology off at the door and walk away. Like it almost needs to be a collaborative effort when you're onboarding these new and different things, because there's training, training all of our staff. How does it seamlessly, hopefully, work into the workflows that we're in that are so chaotic and time sensitive, right? We have a 3-week planting window. And if you end up messing around with some kind of software that slows things down, like it's just not, we need the people to be there.
Yeah, I would agree. These companies come at you and, it's awesome to be on the leading edge of stuff and trying stuff and helping shape it. But exactly that. The problem is when you need it to work, you can set it up as good as you can. But it's really hard when you're in the height and you got the time crunches, you've got problems, calving problems, whatever, to really work those kinks out. It can be really hard to do. So that's where, but if you do have the support and they're also understanding that you can't necessarily do everything the way they want it done and come at you, like that's a challenge we've had with some things in the past is these companies expect you to drop everything to help develop their product, but you can't always do that. There's got to be a balance there. And I think most companies recognize that. And if they're really open, because when these things are built, they're often built without full understanding. And every operation is different. Every farm is different. So if they're not willing to look at how it fits in with you and how they can adapt it, then that really kind of stifles the growth of it.
We always have a great mantra at AdFarm, which is if you've met one farmer, you've met one farmer. Everybody is very unique in their operation and their goals, their objectives, and how they think about their business. So having that kind of wide-ranging perspective is important. I want to talk a little bit about sustainability. And you mentioned it, we both mentioned it in terms of water and water usage. That's an important initiative that is driving some new technologies or some new tools. As we see an increase in a focus on sustainability and regenerative agriculture practices, how does that change the tools that you utilize, or how does that change the tools that you may need or need access to better manage or navigate some of those sustainability and regenerative agriculture environments?
I think that there's maybe a misconception around this when we talk about sustainable or regenerative. We maybe think in our you picture in your head something that's maybe like it was 100 years ago, right? You're kind of returning to the past, returning to nature. But in fact, I think it's the opposite. I think these new practices and new ways of doing things is going to require even more data and more technology to do it right. And I think it's going to have, well, hopefully have more tools in the toolbox, but just know how to use them the most responsibly. I think that's sort of where it's going to go. And we're going to have to measure more things to actually understand how these practices are improving our operations, right? Like soil health metrics and things like that.
Yeah, when you talk about the sustainability thing, it's, my answer would be kind of along the same lines. All this stuff progresses very fast in a lot of ways. As you slowly change your operation, sometimes you don't even realize what you've changed. But all these sustainability initiatives, they only work, and what is the line? You can't be in the green if you're in the red. And there's a lot said to that. But the interesting thing I always find with the sustainability regenerative ag thing is in a lot of ways that it does improve your profitability. And if you can make that work, and the best way it works is if you don't have to, make a big investment into it. It's just making those small incremental changes. And I think that's what deters a lot of people from these types of conversations is they feel they got to go out and invest a whole bunch of money or do those kind of things, to get to the end goal. But you can phase that in over a lot of years and keep making small incremental changes, and that'll take you a long way.
Yeah, and I think sustainability, we kind of have a frame that it's somewhere that we're going to arrive at, and then you're sort of done. But I think it's just something that's, like you say, continuous little things, and you're going to do it all the time forever, basically. But yeah, it's not one and done. It's going to be continuous changes over time.
Yeah, I know for us, I can just, I'm more on the farming side, which isn't my specialty. That's my brother's specialty. But I look at our irrigation, and I'm sure you've seen significant changes in your irrigation too. But, we used to have to be careful watering after seeding because the soil would crust over and those kind of things. And, we've gone to cover cropping programs and changed a whole bunch of things. And we don't even work our irrigation anymore. We're light sandy soil. So even after silaging comes off, all the heavy traffic, all the heavy trucks, we run 1,000 head of cattle on that irrigation all winter long. And other than a few tiny areas and one rocky little area, we don't touch our land with a cultivator. It's all disc drilled in, no disturbance, those kind of things. So that's greatly improved our profitability from on the cattle side, on the farming side, everything. So, but we got there over small incremental changes over time. And we didn't go out and invest $1 million in different farm equipment. We just made small changes over time to get where we're at.
Really, just because I'm super interested, as you talk about some of those sustainability initiatives, using cover crops or just the need to measure more things. Can you give us just a little bit of an idea of what are all the things that you're starting to measure or using new tools and technologies to measure? I imagine it's related to soil health, to seeding, to cover cropping, to obviously end goal yields and outcomes and things like that. But maybe just give us a little bit of a sense of all those things.
Yeah, for us, something that's relatively new is measuring our soil health. I'm actually doing soil health testing. We didn't do that in the past. And our customers, the statement is we need to improve soil health. We need to improve it. But again, if we don't know where we're starting, we don't know where we're going, and we don't know what of these practices we're doing that are actually making a change. So we've started to measure that so we have some kind of a baseline to build off of.
Yeah, I mean, we see, we don't get super scientific about it, but our silage yields and stuff have all increased over time. And we all monitor that through, the monitors through the cabs, and we overlay, and we're doing variable rate on fertilizer application, all those kind of things. We do soil testing, so you get organic matter levels and all that in your soil. But for us, in our operation, you can tell by seeing the soil, by feeling the soil. You don't have to get scientific about it. We see the results. We see the improved water drainage, the improved production. You see all those things, you can feel it. And I guess when you talk about the small incremental changes, I think one of the biggest mistakes we do, and a lot of operations do, is you're so entrenched in your operation, you forget to look back and see where you've come from. And when you stop and look back where how things have changed in the last 20 years, let alone the last 40 years, 50 years before my time, it's incredible. But it's such small incremental changes to get where we are.
When you think about some of the trends affecting agriculture, both today and into the future, what are some of the opportunities that you think your farms and your businesses are going to be exploring most? We've obviously talked a lot about AI. We've talked about sustainability initiatives. We all recognize that those aren't going away. Are there other areas that you think are going to become more important as we go into the future, that some new innovation is going to be important to continue the momentum with that?
I think for us, anything that can reduce labor is going to be a big one. Just some of the things that we're throwing around and thinking about is when we're shipping out our potatoes, at this point, whenever we're shipping to the McCain, Cavendish, we have 6 people that stand on the conveyor belt just picking out rocks, dirt lumps, whatever. Is that something we can replace with an optical sorter that has some AI functionality in it? That type of thing, I think, is going to be the big change for us in how we do things going forward, is automation.
Yeah, so labor for us, of course, will always be a big thing as well. So I guess I'm going to change it from direct innovation a little bit if I can. I think an important thing that's really developing in ag, and it's being really driven now, I think, by the value of these farm businesses. I mean, you can be a small farm now and it's a multi-million-dollar business. So I think it's changing this. It's business development and leadership development. And it's innovation in a different sort of way. But it is becoming increasingly challenging just to manage these businesses because of the money that's on the line. And if you want to grow and develop your farm, you need to be able to manage that operation. It can be a family operation, but there's so many dynamics to it now that taking business development, learning how to look at things differently, leadership training, learning how to work over your own personal hurdles to allow your farm operation to grow and look past your personal hang-ups, and just allowing you to look at things differently. Things like partnering with other farms in any different ways, bringing on staff, handling them differently. Like one of the things we're looking at is how do we get employees to be part of our farm? What can we give them to make them want to stay? How can we make them be a part of the business? So it's looking at all those things. It's a little different than the technology we've been talking about, but it's an important trend that really needs to kind of be at the forefront, because it can really change how your operations go. And I always say this is kind of tied up into the whole succession planning thing and the future of the family farm. One of the reasons to me that farm succession planning is a topic that never seems to go away. It's pushed and pushed more. And one of the big holdups with that is that you can go, or you can read a book, you can go to a workshop, they can talk to you about farm succession. You can be all pumped and motivated about it. But when you go back home to your family, are you willing to jump over those hurdles, deal with those hard conversations? So that's where things like this can lead those conversations and help people get through that stuff so the family farms can succeed and grow.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would just add to what you were saying about leadership, and sometimes the innovative stuff isn't a fancy, cool new drone or something, but something we implemented because we were having trouble, a lot of staff turnover. And we said, why is this? So we actually implemented an annual survey that goes out to everyone. And it says, what would make your life easier at work? What's going well? What's not going well? How's the communication with your supervisor? And we analyze those results annually as a supervisor team, and we come up with our goals based on what our staff is telling us. And that's fundamentally changed, our staff retention and how we work with our employees. It's been a really cool addition to what we're doing. So
that's awesome. In conversation with just both of you, you've each talked about professional development and how important that's been not only for you personally, but for your operation as well. Craig, I think you talked a little bit about a peer network that you utilize, right? Professional coaching. And obviously you're very invested in professional development and international elements of that, right? Thanks for the shout out to my alma mater, Kansas State University. But maybe just talk a little bit about that professional development to expand on what you're talking about, because that is such a critical component of the future of farms. Talk about maybe some of the tools or some of the ways that you see that professional development coming to life to help these farms begin to navigate some of those changes.
Yeah, for me, I guess it kind of feeds back to a little what I said before. Like, I've read some books on leadership. I did all that stuff, and I knew the person, I guess, that the leadership style I wanted to be, but I couldn't get past a certain point. And that was quite often just dealing with people. And it's not that I was bad at it, but I plateaued. And then I looked at our operation and how I had to completely change how I managed it, because there's only a couple of us left. So that really drove me to figure out, and then just through conversations with other people, and I always say the best resources I have are some of the people I've been able to surround myself with. Such awesome producers that are so forward thinking, and sometimes I feel pretty lucky just to be friends with them, right, and have these conversations. And I know some people who took the Leader Shift program, which is an agriculture-based program, and I'm still involved, but first year was pretty intensive, and it just allowed me to break through those barriers that, personal barriers I had in having conversations. And it's taken a lot of years, and I still have conversations where I'm like, that was the dumbest thing I could have said, but you get better all the time at it, so it allows for that development, and we can't run our businesses without staff, too. So beyond the family conversations, if it's a family operation, if you can't develop your staff and have those conversations with them and grow a team, you're always going to struggle. And it's a struggle you don't want to have all the time.
And I would say for me, there's a couple things for professional development that I think are the most important. And because farming can be so isolating, it's really important to surround yourself with some peers. So I do have a couple different peer groups that we meet regularly, and we pick a different topic, or like what's going on with you, and just discuss what's working on other operations, what pieces of those, learnings can we take back to our farm. So I do that almost once a month. I meet with different groups of producers or agronomists and have those discussions. And then I would say the single most impactful personal development program I've been fortunate to be a part of is Nuffield Canada Agriculture Scholarships. So that's I was awarded a scholarship in 2023, and I was able to travel around the world and learn about my study topic, which was regenerative ag and potato production, and build a global network of other super nerdy agriculture people. And it's been the coolest experience. So
That's awesome.
Getting back to our conversation around innovation, you both mentioned efficiency and talked a little bit about robotics. So since we talked about AI, as you look at some of those labor efficiencies, what's your sense in terms of robotics? Is that something that you think you can adopt, will adopt, are excited about, or is that an area that you're beginning to explore of how robotics and automation can help with your operations?
Yeah, robotic. There's so many things that'd be so cool. It's just whether it's feasible for the operation. I always find with a lot of this technology, on the scale of feedlots nowadays, we're not a huge feedlot. On the scale of farm operations, we're not a large farm operation. So I always find we're kind of sometimes in this kind of middle zone where we're not small, but we're not big the way farms have gone nowadays. So, automated feeding for a feedlot, where these feed trucks drive themselves around automatically and, stuff like that. Like, it's awesome to think about, but at this point, it's not something that's feasible for an operation like ours. So those are the things I kind of look, when I think about robotics or those kind of things, is where I would like to go someday. But I'm not seeing that for us on the horizon right now.
I might have more enthusiasm for that than our board of directors and CEO at Quattro, but I think that eventually that's where we'll end up, right? Just the sheer scale and the way things are going. I think that's it's probably a no-brainer, but not right now, eventually. I would say, that's a lot of money to switch everything over to automated or driverless tractors or whatever the case may be, but I think that's the future of it.
Do you have that in your staff survey?
Not yet.
So that brings up an interesting perspective too, in terms of, there is a financial aspect to this, right? These tools cost money, and it requires investment and utilization. I'm sure you're in a little bit of a different situation of you're making that presentation to a board of directors, right? And you're making the case for why you should invest in this new technology. And in your case, you're looking at your own balance sheets and deciding if that's something that you should be investing in. Maybe talk a little bit about how you evaluate, how you justify, how you research it and look at the financials behind each investment and what that looks like for each of the tools that you're interested in or interested in adopting.
Well, I will say growing up in a family operation, partnered with uncles and cousins, I would have given anything to have a board of directors that wasn't family, because they, it's not a bad thing. The family was always very open to looking to new ideas, but you had to sell it, and you had to convince. So it forced you to really look and prove to yourself that this was something that could add value to the farm. And sometimes it's hard to put that exact value. It's my uncles and stuff, they built the operation. They started off with nothing. They wouldn't spend a penny without spending them. So when you're wanting something that they see could bring quote unquote value or make something better, if you couldn't put that exact dollar value behind it, it was a really hard sell sometimes. And so I had a lot of hard conversations and a lot of back and forth. And you talk about the adoption curve, and sometimes that really slowed the adoption curve in a way, because it took, after you started looking at this technology, it was 2 years after before you finally got everyone convinced to come around on it. So it wasn't a bad thing, and I don't take it like I'm saying it that way, because it really forces you to look at these technologies, because it's really easy to get excited about things, and you see these new technologies and it is exciting and you think that'd be so cool, but you really have to look at the value it can bring. So
yeah, and I think new technology really needs to earn its place, because it's not like we're not functioning today without it, right? So it needs to disrupt a legacy system that is working and paying the bills. So you kind of have to look at it that way. So it will sound like a broken record a little bit, but how does that help with data integration and decision making? Is it improving our efficiency? Are we able to produce the same or more yield and good quality product on the same or less acres? Like, that's the sort of things we're thinking about.
Do you find you have to make a strong financial case before you adopt anything from the board of directors? Or are they more open to, let's try it and see what the financial side of it is?
It kind of depends what it is, but we're pretty open to trying something, but you still have to have it thought out. And there is a group of, 6 or 8 of us that sit in a room and make these decisions together. So you really have to have your facts straight, because people will question you, because it almost becomes like a contest. There's 6 supervisors. We all want something different. We have to make a case so that it's consensus in that room. I want a new auger. Well, I want a new tractor. And who has the better case to what we're prioritizing out of our capital purchases for that year? So you really do have to have your ducks in a row before you even show up to that room to ask for what it is. So
I think it's really important when looking at new technology and stuff, having that long-term vision for your operation and where you want it to go. And is this gonna get you to where you want to ultimately be? So if your board of directors or your family or however it may be you also have to sell the vision. Like, that's what I had to do, is this is where we need to go in the future. So yeah, it's just selling that vision as well. And is that a part of it? Is that a tool to help you get there?
We've touched on it in terms of, when we look at some of the most trusted advisors. So, farms don't exist on their own, and just like any business doesn't, there's a number of individuals that contribute to or that you consult with. Maybe talk a little bit about some of your most trusted advisors as you're evaluating those decisions, as you're justifying or making the case for some of those investments in new technologies. Who are some of the trusted advisors that you turn to the most to help you navigate some of those changes, some of the new products, some of the new technologies?
I wouldn't say it's one particular person. It's a network of people, whether that's other agronomists or other agronomists that do work on our operation. Is it universities or government researchers that have some data to, that support that technology? Is it the company itself? There's a multitude of people that I'm asking a question to before I make any decision, because I ask across that network, and really I'm looking for, consistency, maybe over consensus, just because I don't think in ag anything works all the time. Like it's so variable. Our soil is different, the weather is variable, every season is different. So if everything kind of is trending in a way that people have something positive to say about that technology or product, whatever it is, then maybe that's something I would entertain taking a look at, right? So
Yeah, I would kind of be along the same lines. Yeah, just looking at it's a group of people that help you make the decisions. I always, like I said, mention some of the friends I've been able to make over the years and people I talk to on a regular basis. And if it's a new technology, even speaking with them, like, what do you think of this? Do you think this would bring value? Would it bring value to you? Because a lot of us have similar type operations. And so that peer support and that peer network, I always put a lot of value on. And, and then even the family dynamics in our operation, it's good to get grilled hard on things to make sure. So, and, they're advising as well. Essentially is, in a lot of ways is what they're doing. It's, you're forced to sell it, not just to them, but to yourself. So
I wouldn't be a good marketing communications agency person if I didn't ask a question about marketing communications. But there is a multitude of ways that producers are learning about or exploring new innovations and technologies. So I'm just interested from each of your perspectives, what are the channels or what are the mediums that you trust the most in terms of getting information from? Or what are the mediums that you turn to first to learn more about a new technology or something that you're beginning to explore? Is there a specific media or a channel or a way that you like to learn about new innovations and technologies?
No. I guess, over the years, I've seen needs in our operations for certain things. The main one that comes to mind is, and this goes back to we're kind of in this silo. We're not a big feedlot operation, but we're not a small one. And we could never find a feed system for the feed wagons that fit the bill for us. And it was cards and sheets and numbers you couldn't decipher and a lot of triggering. So for that, like I'd looked for 5 years and 5-6 times a year, I would just Google stuff. And I still kind of do that for a way if I see a need in something and just to see what comes up and you find things that way. I love a good trade show and that's a good way to, and not just walking around looking, but having conversations with people and saying, really knowing what your needs are. And I find sometimes you get led to somebody who has the solution or is working on the solution or a product or a program that can really help the operation. So that's kind of how I, kind of approach things. And you never know who you talk to and what you can learn.
yeah, I don't think there's one particular preferred way. There's a multitude of ways. I mean, conferences, trade shows, increasingly digital, right? Whether that's social media or newsletters in your email, there's a million ways to find out about what's going on out there. And also, again, accessing that peer-to-peer network, having conversations about what's working for other people. But I think not only where are you getting information, but how good is the information that you're getting. So I think you sometimes have to be your own sort of little researcher and like look into the stuff you're being presented, because don't take it at face value, because a lot of the times, it's going to increase your yield 2 times. Well, how did you get that data? Where's the data from? Is it from a greenhouse? Is it from a field? Is it from a research plot or an actual like functioning commercial level of operation? So it's being able to evaluate the information you are receiving, because we're bombarded with it almost every day.
There's no bigger deterrent to a new product is when they make claims that it's going to improve your yields or improve your cattle by, 5-10%. There's nothing more deterring than that. That's almost an instant walk away in a lot of cases for me. Because as I mentioned, there's no silver bullet. Cropping side, cattle, there's no silver bullet.
And if there's other marketing people in the room, if I see one more pamphlet that has one big plant next to one small plant, like I immediately throw that off my desk because I can find that in any field. So just stop.
Do you prefer to find companies, or do you prefer companies to find you? Because we've been able to have this conversation across both here in the or there in the U.S. and here in Canada, and it's been a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of a lot of producers saying, you know what, we like to find the things that we want to research more, and others have said, you know, it's very much we don't know what we don't know, and so we like, you know, companies to find us. What's your preference with that? Do you find that you'd rather find the companies, or would you rather have the companies find you?
I don't know if that really matters so much. It's sort of, if I'm looking for something, I can go online or I can reach out and find out what it is. But also some of the cooler things that I've just stumbled upon have been somebody who sent me an email and said, hey, have you heard about this? So I think both ways can work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Both ways work great. I sometimes find when a company comes to you with a new product, especially if it's a new innovative type of product just beginning, sometimes they can get a little aggressive and in pushing that product on you. And although the intent is perfect and spot on, you know, some of these decisions are hard. Is it going to affect my bottom line? You know, you have to be able to pay for these products, and sometimes it takes a year or two to process it, see where it goes. Because if you want to be an early adopter, there's quite often struggles with that, adopting the new technology early. Like it's not fine-tuned. When you talk about marketing, and you always see on the advertisements the guy walking through the feedlot with his iPad and a big smile, or walking through the cropland with the big smile. They don't show that the 2 years before that where you were pulling your hair out. You know, yeah, so it takes time to get there.
Very cool. I know we're getting close on time, and we are going to open it up for questions from the audience. So while you guys are kind of thinking about the questions that you may want to ask, one final question. If you had one piece of advice to give to an agribusiness, a company, serving farmers about how they could better serve each of you, what would that one piece of advice be?
In our case, look at our whole operation. We're diverse, and every part of the operation, the cattle is linked to how we crop. The cropping is linked, you know, everything runs in a circle. Nobody does anything in our operation without looking at how it affects the other parts of the operation. So that's always really important to me. You know, we're not siloed. Each division isn't in a box. And that's really important to recognize.
And I think if we're talking about this question in terms of like technology or innovation, and I had a conversation with someone just before this, but farms are not your beta testers for your new software. Please don't come to us with something that you know already is not in the final stages of being ready to roll out to the public, because we don't have time to mess around with your app that doesn't work or has glitches, if you know that. I think we often get things that are kind of half ready, and then we're expected to work with the company to sort those bugs out. And I don't, as the lady I was talking to said, I don't think that would fly in any other industry, right? So why in ours?
Have you been beta testers before? Is that something that you engage in, as long as you know that you're in a beta stage?
They didn't outright say that, but when we go to try the thing, please give us your feedback and we will improve it as we go through the season, right? It's just, it's not great, especially when you're being asked to pay for the product. It's different when you're working with someone to develop something that's going to market, but when it's sort of under the guise of, here, we'll give you this, so you got to pay, but also help us make it better. That doesn't sit well with me, and it's time consuming.
So not opposed to being a beta tester, just as long as you know you're a beta tester.
And we're not paying.
Sounds good. All right. So with that, happy to open it up to questions. Holler it out, and I'll restate it.
Emily, 2 hours ago, I was in here, innovation in Alberta. I heard us talking from the air. No, that's so loud. There we go. I'm gonna turn around this way and holler at the crowd. See that? You can steal it.
Emily, thank you for talking about the importance that the product has to be complete. 2 hours ago, I was sitting in front of an innovation leader in this province talking about our struggles as an Alberta company trying to bring an egg innovation to market. And you know what her response was? She said, go to you. She said, you're supposed to be funding me to figure out the product. So we have a problem in this province. We need to fix it. And the fix is people like me need resources to work with people like Todd to make sure the product is complete. And that takes money. We've got to get that money in place if we're serious about ag tech in this province. Sorry, that's a statement more than a question, but I'm hoping you'll just respond with a resounding yes.
Maybe the next big innovation in ag is that we change how this financial model works. And some of these tech companies have to put their finances on the line instead of ours to make these things move forward. I don't know. Is it cost sharing? Is there other opportunities to do things differently where the onus isn't all on us to figure it out for them? I don't know.
Do you find that as you're adopting innovations that you're oftentimes replacing a tool, or is it entirely a new process, new system, new way of doing things that you're trying to adopt?
It's probably some of both. Okay. Like sometimes it's in addition to something we're already doing, and then sometimes it's something that's totally fundamentally different or an add-on or in addition to. So I think it's sometimes both, but it always seems to disrupt the way we do things or have done them for so long, right? And I think that's what makes it so challenging, is that you have operators that have been doing something a certain way for 20 plus years, and all of a sudden you're asking them to change. Even if it's not that difficult, it's challenging, right? Just a mindset shift.
Any thoughts?
No, I don't have much to add to that. Yeah, no, I really don't have much to add to that at all.
Sounds good. Other questions? Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Craig and Emily, when you were talking about like implementing innovation and you're talking about like, will you actually use it? What would you say to, like, is there anything that companies can do to help you understand how to use it to better implement that information on your farm? Kind of a big, vague question, I know, but.
I almost might flip that back and say, is there something that can be done differently so that the company coming to us actually understands our processes and the way we do things, and how can that technology fit into the processes we're already using, and just understanding what actually goes on a big, large scale operation, I think would be fundamental to their success. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. They got to come in, and because as mentioned before, every ranch is so unique. So developing that understanding of how that operation works. And then I'll also say, take the time to learn the vision of the operation and how that can help you achieve that vision you have or your goals going forward. Because that's an important question to ask.
Other questions? All right. All right. Well, please join me in thanking Emily and Craig for being a part of the discussion today, for being a centerpiece of the discussion.